Continuing on in my response to some of the Senate hearing on gun control, we'll pick up with Chief Johnson talking about background checks.
Again, it's like letting 40% of people just pass a TSA checkpoint at an airport. It's not an inconvenience. The record shows that nearly 92% of the individuals that go in to try to do a background check at a gun shop, in a minute and a half, they're done. I can't write a ticket, a citation, in a minute and a half. Even with e-tick technology, I can't do it that fast.
I'm just wondering how often the following radio traffic is heard in Baltimore. Dispatch Baltimore 1 traffic out of Maryland. I'm certain I know the answer to that question.
Not inconvenient. And it's...
Oh, Chief Johnson, just to help you out, here's what you should argue. I don't find that expenditure of time inconvenient. You are not entitled to represent what other people find convenient and inconvenient. What you should say is, yeah, it is inconvenient, but I don't care about that. We don't care how inconvenient it is. We don't care that it's inconvenient. We want it to happen. Just to help you out there. Represent what expenditures of your time you find convenient and inconvenient. Don't try to put your words in other people's mouths.
It's fair to the gun owner and the shop owner, too. Why impose on a shop owner, a gun dealer, federal licensed dealer, more restrictions than you do on anyone else?
The same reason those impositions are made on anyone wanting to get a business license and to be a business owner. You know, if you want to open up a store of some type, you have to go through certain things that the person who wants to shop at your store doesn't. I don't know why this is difficult, but there you have it.
And if you think for a minute, you could sell your gun to your neighbor that you've known for 10 years. You don't know your neighbor. You do not know your neighbor.
You do not know your neighbor. Let's not forget that.
And the only way to make sure that you're safe in what you're doing is a comprehensive background check.
Interestingly enough, in a minute we're going to hear from Captain Kelly about the shooter in Tucson, who Captain Kelly says did actually pass a background check. Anyway, but
it's my understanding that 74% of NRA members support a background check. I am a hunter.
He's answering a question about if it's his experience that most people support background checks.
I love to hunt. I own several guns. I love going to the range with my son.
The shootings happened at the Shoot Straight gun range near Orlando. Security camera video shows Marie Moore walk up behind her son, who was taking target practice, point a revolver at the back of his head, and fire a single shot. Then she put the gun in her mouth and pulled the trigger. Authorities say Moore and her 20-year-old son were sharing a lane and shooting with rented guns. The son died at the scene. The mother died later at a hospital.
You do? You love going to the range with your son? Chief Johnson, I'm just going to point out, you don't know your son. You don't know your family. Observe.
Placer County 911, where is your emergency?
My house.
What's the address?
152 River Creek Lane.
Okay, what's the emergency?
I just killed my mom and my sister.
What?
I just killed my mom and my sister.
You just killed your mother and your sister? How did you do that?
I shot him with a .22 revolver.
Now, I'm sure that you're not going to find it very palatable to hear me telling you, assuming you watch this, that you don't know the people that you think that you know. It doesn't sound that much better to other people who have known their neighbor for 10, 20 years to have someone like you come by and go, well, you don't really know this person in the way that you're saying it. No one really knows anyone else. You never really know what's going on in someone else's head.
It's enjoyable. I've met many great people.
The shooter
That's Captain Kelly, who's going to talk about the Tucson shooting.
in Tucson showed up with two 33-round magazines, one which was in his 9mm. He unloaded the contents of that magazine in 15 seconds, very quickly. It all happened very, very fast. The first bullet went into Gabby's head. Bullet number 13 went into a 9-year-old girl named Christina Taylor Green, who was very interested in democracy and our government and really deserved a full life committed to advancing those ideas. If he had a 10-round magazine, well, let me back up. When he tried to reload one 33-round magazine with another 33-round magazine, he dropped it. And a woman named Patricia Maish grabbed it, and it gave bystanders a time to tackle him. I contend if that same thing happened when he was trying to reload one 10-round magazine with another 10-round magazine, meaning he did not have access to a high-capacity magazine, and the same thing happened, Christina Taylor Greene would be alive today. I certainly am willing to give up my right to own a high-capacity magazine to bring that young woman back.
Interestingly, in making that statement, you're conceding that there is actually a right to have a high-capacity magazine, and then you say you're willing to give up your right to it. That's fine. Your rights, you're free to exercise or not exercise at your leisure. That's what it means to have the right. However, what you don't get to do is to say, hey, because I'm not interested in exercising this one particular right that I have, there should be a law passed that other people also can't exercise that same right. It just doesn't work that way. Like, I may or may not want to vote in the next election. Just say. The fact that I'm willing to give up my right to vote in that election is no kind of argument that, therefore, no one else should be able to vote in the next election.
That young girl. Now let me continue with what happened that day.
Okay.
In that 15 seconds, or actually with the first shot, a man ran out of Walgreens. A good guy with a gun. With the intent to do the right thing. An armed citizen. He admits that he came within about a half a second of shooting the man who tackled Jared Loughner and nearly killing him.
Just out of curiosity, do you think that the number of rounds that the guy had in any way affected whether or not he came close to shooting or not shooting? Moreover, do you think that he no longer carries a weapon because he came close? And another way to say that he came close to doing that is to say he properly judged the situation and held his fire. You know, he came close, realized, accurately assessed the situation, and then made a decision not to shoot, which is an example of responsible gun ownership. They're not just running out there just all willy-nilly shooting people. Oh, I heard a noise, blam, blam, blam. This man walked out, withdrew his sidearm, I suppose. I guess, I don't know, maybe he had a rifle, I don't know what it was. Was getting ready to engage, looked at the situation, realized there was a scuffle, and then made the proper decision not to just start shooting into some people. Exactly what you want.
I mean, we almost had this horrific mass murder followed up with a horrific accident.
Yeah, almost. Well, you did have the horrific incident, but not the accident. You almost had it, but you didn't because of the sound judgment of that citizen who came out to intervene and then realized it would be unwise for him to start shooting because of the situation he actually saw. And I don't know whether the guy is trained in any way or not.
The horrific mass murder because of the high-capacity magazine, and the horrific accident
That didn't
because
happen.
of the armed person there who, with good intention,
And sound judgment.
wanted to end something that was going really bad.
And then realizing that in so trying to do that, if he discharged his firearm, he might hit innocent people. He didn't discharge his firearm. I mean, that guy deserves a round of applause.
We've had cases, including a case in Rhode Island, in which trained police officers...
This is a senator, and they're talking about... They had just finished a conversation on teachers being armed and some other things like that, and now he's pointing out, what you'll hear in a second.
Officers who were off-duty responded to a situation, and because they hadn't been adequately trained in how to respond off-duty, and because they were out of uniform, it led to tragic blue-on-blue events.
Okay, I find that a little bit repugnant there, Senator, because they hadn't been trained how to respond to things off-duty. You're off-duty, something really shitty happens, you do the best that you can. You don't have all the equipment that you have when you're on the job, you don't have your shiny lights, you don't have your radio, but you still have... The same reason that a lot of people go into law enforcement doesn't stop becoming a reason when they're off. Oh, well, I like to save people, and I wanted to go out and do the right thing, but now that I'm off duty, more beer nuts. They try to intervene, and it's not their fault that the responding officers make a split-second decision that turns out to be wrong and kills them. It is not the fault of the off-duty officers who are getting shot by on-duty officers.
Presumably that would have some bearing on armed police officers responding to an event in which a lot of armed and untrained teachers are trying to defend students in a school.
And why do you suppose that the armed teachers would be untrained? I mean, it's not all that difficult to say, hey, if you want to carry a firearm on the clock, you must be trained in how to use it. We must send you through a training class, just like we do with the cops. Well, not just like that, but I'm saying, like, it would, okay, I could just as easily say, well, armed and untrained police officers, and then properly you'd respond, but we train our officers. Well, okay, because we have that ability, and it's not restricted to law enforcement, we could just as easily train teachers, if they happen to be of the mood wanting to carry firearms. Whether they should or shouldn't is a separate question, but assuming that you're going to, someone's advocating for it, what you've just raised is no objection. All you have to do is train them, and then you have armed and trained teachers.
It's a very important point. 2 years ago in Baltimore City, an on-duty officer in plain clothes was shot by uniformed on-duty personnel, and they worked the same shift.
Now, in the one case, Captain Kelly's talking about a citizen who didn't know, such that I'm aware, Adam from Eve when he walked out, but he appropriately assessed the situation and restrained his fire. Here, you have a police officer on duty, dealing with someone, another police officer who actually knows the officer, shows up and makes the wrong decision and kills him. Now, there are mitigating factors, to be sure. It's nighttime. I'm just going to point out for the people who might wonder, I've checked the stats for the last few years, and it's holding fairly constant. Between 4 and 5% of all police deaths related to gunfire are caused by other officers killing one another. Which means about, 95, 96% are caused by other people trying to kill the cops. But you can't just ignore that 4%. But that's no argument whatever that you shouldn't have plainclothes officers. It's no argument whatever that the cops shouldn't be armed, just because some officers are going to incorrectly assess the situation for a host of reasons and kill a person trying to do the right thing. For the same reason, that's not an argument against, oh, well, that happened, I guess we need to disarm all the cops. It's not an argument about disarming the citizens or restraining their magazine capacity. The number of rounds the police officers making this poor decision have is not what's causing them to kill these police officers mistakenly. Whether they had 100 rounds, 1,000,000 rounds, or 3 rounds, they are still just making the wrong decision.
The darkness of the night, they couldn't tell. And as Captain Kelly has pointed out, that's a major issue in the Tucson shooting.
Well, actually, it wasn't an issue at all, the Tucson shooting. The guy came out, saw what was going on, and then didn't start randomly firing into a crowd of people. The same can't be said, apparently, of the officers on your department. They show up and they do shoot people who they don't need to be shooting. Now, I'm not blaming them. Legitimate accidents happen. It's one of the consequences that just comes with having firearms. And it can happen to the trained people and the untrained people. But it's no argument whatever that, therefore, the cops should be unarmed. Or friendly fire in the military. Oh, well, take away all the weapons from the soldiers. No one would buy that argument. But here you propose it and you expect, oh, well, if it's a guy walking out of the Walmart, I guess, because he might accidentally shoot the wrong person, if there's something bad going on, we should restrict his magazine capacity. Like that has anything whatever to do with whether the guy's capable of recognizing shoot-don't-shoot situations.
Against that background, tell me how much sense you think it makes to have our line of defense be armed teachers.
Certainly, when we have this discussion, you have to, does a teacher have the inner fiber to carry that weapon, the awesome response?
I find it a little bit repugnant that you're asking whether or not the people who are public servants have the fiber to carry the firearms they already own. Presumably, lots of teachers own firearms. And you're actually questioning whether they have the fiber to exercise their right. If they have it in their private life, there's no reason to suppose they're going to be all dramatically different at work. Oh, well, when I'm all responsible and shit when I'm off duty, but now that I'm around a whole bunch of kids, woo, ping, 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 ricochet, rabbit, or some shit. Quick draw McGraw. Just sitting there, all right, kids, while you're doing your spelling test, I'm going to be over here practicing, quick draw procedures. I'll be field stripping my firearm.
You're a teacher in a classroom. You're an educator. You've dedicated your entire life to that pursuit.
No, they haven't dedicated their entire life to it. I hate to tell you, despite the rumors, they actually have time off. And they had their lives before they got into it. All of that makes time available for them to be comfortable carrying firearms. That's like saying, well, the guy who works at the local beer factory, and he's really enthusiastic about brewing beer. He's devoted his professional life, what you should say, his professional life, or as you say, his entire life to brewing beer. Therefore, he won't know how to use a firearm. It just doesn't follow. It's completely stupid. Tens of millions of Americans don't work in law enforcement and carry firearms, and they've devoted their lives to their careers and their families to the same extent that teachers are devoting their lives to their families and their jobs, and yet they all the people in my scenario, own firearms, and presumably know how to use them. Like, I don't know, the southern United States.
But you've got a sidearm strapped to yourself, and you better have it all the time.
That's about the smartest thing you've said. Have it all the time. Bam! I mean, if you're going to take it to work, you don't just, I'll just set this on the chalkboard, by the chalkboard over here today, and kids don't touch. Keep that on you. To be a responsible possessor of a firearm.
Because if you put it in your desk drawer, your purse, or your briefcase, and where are you going to leave it? Let me tell you something. Carrying this weapon on my side's been a pain all these years.
You're free to resign anytime you'd like. I mean, I don't want to burden you with the responsibility of carrying a firearm. I mean, in one hand you're saying that you're proud to do it, and on the other hand you're griping about how much of a burden it is. Pick one.
I'm glad I have it. If I need...
You're glad you have it if you need it, but you're glad that the police officers, the teachers won't have it if they need it. How does that follow? You're happy to have the means by which to resist violence on your behalf or someone else's, should the need arise. Just because you're a police officer doesn't make that concern more acute for you. It's the same reason you want to carry a firearm is the same reason that tens of millions of other people will want to carry it. And teachers happen to be people. Some subset of them will probably want to do it. And incidentally, there's the assistant principal who did stop a school shooting by going to his car and getting out his firearm. So it can be done.
But I'm telling you, it's an
Hey, wait, wasn't he an educator who devoted his life to education? How did he ever find time to learn how to use a firearm? Do you think maybe they let him out of the school at some point?
Some responsibility. And what do you do in the summertime when you dress down? How are you going to safeguard that weapon?
What do you think they will do? They walk in and wearing bikinis? I had nowhere to keep it. I mean, I just didn't know. No room. I couldn't have worn a baggy shirt because it's summer, and apparently they don't make baggy shirts that have short sleeves.
A classroom full of 16-year-old boys that want to touch it.
I'm not sure what we're talking about here. Are we still talking about firearms?
How are you going to do that? And certainly, the holsters. I'm spending $200 a piece just for the holster, so you can't rip.
That's probably your best argument there, then, because then the teachers' unions will be like, we need a pay raise to buy the holsters, because it's so... I'm with you on that part.
From my side. So these are all the factors in a robust psychological service section. We all face catastrophic changes in our lives as we go through divorce
and you note that it's possible as an institution to have internally the means to evaluate the various employees. School districts, it might surprise you to learn, have employees and an institution. They could institute the same things that you seem to find sufficiently reasonable for the law enforcement. Moreover, you're not distinguishing between primary and secondary duties. As a primary duty, as a police officer, you need the firearm and it's worn externally. Teachers, their primary duty is to teach. However, they're not going to be running around wearing a badge and a gun belt. they would have it concealed. I'm guessing. So, I'm just curious how it is that the student, these 16-year-old boys apparently, because girls don't like guns maybe, would know that this particular teacher is armed and be running up there wanting to touch their firearm. And why would you think that someone who knows the teacher is armed and why the teacher is armed is going to be in the mood of wanting to run up there just to touch it without running the risk of saying, hey, you know what, I might be a threat, and if I run up there to try to grab this teacher, I might get my ass shot. Just, some things to throw into your calculus there, Chief.
Other things that bring us down. But you need people to step in, like we have in policing, to notice those things and deal with them. This is a major issue. Again, it's like letting...
Yeah, and you could do all of that in the school district. Anyway, have a great day.